Managers, welcome to Management Q's webinar series on mastering the art of effective leadership. Today's session provides a snapshot of the leadership skills specific to inspiring that help managers excel in their role. I'm Marisa Stoltzfus, your HROD executive expert, bringing you more than 25 years of experience, and I'm here to help host today's webinar. In our previous webinar series, The Art of Effective Management, we focused on those functions that contribute to high-performing managers. Mastering the art of effective leadership takes the manager's skills to the next level, providing the crossover and differences between managing work and leading people. In this series, we'll share bits of knowledge, some tips, and a few tools that will help you navigate the differences between management and leadership. While this series is not a comprehensive training program, we will explore the various functions of leadership and share a few key takeaway ideas for you to consider on your personal journey. Feel free to participate actively by entering questions or comments in the chat during our session. And now I'll turn it over to Dr. Myra Austin, CEO and founder of Management Q's, to walk us through today's content. Dr. Myra?
Thank you. And I was on point with getting my mute off. So welcome everybody. We hope everybody had a great holiday weekend. So to share a little bit about myself and Marisa, so we both have over 2 decades of experience. I dabble in operations and management, and it's the sandbox that I love playing in. And Marisa is equally as playful in the HR space, and we both just adore being champions for our next generation of managers and our current managers and everything that they experience in the workforce. So today we are going to dive in, but before we do that, here's a little bit of who Management Q's is. So we're a management training and development company, and we're different in that we measure performance in the training experience. We're backed by neuroscience, and quite frankly, we move a little differently. We care very much about the manager's experience and what they're actually experiencing, how they're applying what they're learning, and how we can take their mindset and shift it a little bit so that they can become more of influence and impact. And so components of that really speak to leadership. And so we're going to dive in and focus in on that today. And so today what we're going to get into is leading with vision and purpose. And in the management role, our primary function as managers, especially entry to mid-level, is to execute. So if you're an entry level or mid-level manager, the value you bring to the table is highly built around execution. As you move up in your career, the focus and emphasis shifts to being more of a leader, being more of somebody who provides strategic guidance and direction. And so our leadership series is really kind of giving managers an insight look into the leadership component that you should be incorporating into management, especially if you want to navigate up the career path and grow in your profession as a manager and a leader. Okay, so we're going to break down this topic. We're going to give you some takeaways. We'll go through some resources that you guys can utilize and tap into. And then we'll open it up to any Q&A if there are any questions out there or comments, and then I'll pass it right back to Marisa to take us through the closing. Okay, so to start, inspiration as a function of leadership partners with motivation. And so motivation was the topic we talked about in our last session, and they are not the same. And so making that distinguishing taking that and distinguishing it is really important. So motivation is the internal drive or the desire to achieve a goal. Okay, inspiration is the external influence that spurs us to act, right? And you can verbatim say it, and be inspired to move, be inspired to take an action. It pulls us towards something. And so that's where the leadership piece of things is so critical, because if you're an effective leader, people are pulled towards you. They're pulled towards your vision and towards the purpose that you're laboring. And so unique opportunity in the workforce when we're mobilizing our troops as managers. So here are what inspirational leadership abilities look like? They look like hope. They look like enthusiasm. They look like having a strong sense of purpose. They look like having followership, right? So these are the abilities that leaders who are inspirational embody. Marisa, any thoughts on any leadership or any examples of leadership that relate to some of what we just shared? You're looking for the mute button. I see ya.
Got it. Uh, yeah, this difference of internal intrinsic motivation as opposed to the external inspiration. I mean, I think that's such a key differentiator that we need to emphasize. Last session, we talked about motivation. This session, we're talking about inspiring leadership. Hope is by far one of the most prevalent emotional feelings that people get when they have a new leader or when there is an inspiring leader. And it's a very powerful emotion. It leads to enthusiasm. It leads to a strong sense of purpose and followership. So, all of that comes together to excite us, right? And to get us really charged about what it is we're doing. And what a great feeling when you can go to work and be excited about what you're doing.
Oh, 100%. It makes all the difference. It makes our job as managers a lot easier, by the way. And so throughout today's session, use it as a way to audit. Am I creating these feelings in others, and ask people, right? And the feedback will kind of tell you if this is something that needs to be worked on or not. But how do leaders inspire? So first and foremost, by modeling behavior. And you're a presence of admiration. And even if somebody doesn't necessarily sync up with you, the fact that you're in a position of authority, the fact that you stand for something in the organization, the fact that you're being acknowledged in the group in a specific way, all of those things kind of speak to influence that we create through the behavior that we model. And being able to communicate a clear vision is critical, right? Being able to make it easy to understand, not eloquent, easy to understand and connect with others is critical both in management and in leadership. And then empowering individuals. There's a great quote out there that says, a great leader doesn't showcase their abilities. They showcase that of others. You make others feel like they can do something special too. And you create an environment where employees can contribute beyond their outline roles, right? So that's something to the tune of, oh, you know what? You said that really eloquently in the last meeting. You're a really great speaker. How about we give you more speaking opportunities so you can showcase that ability, right? So something like that would not be outlined in a job description, for example. It would be the leader that's seeing that and creating an environment in which the person is empowered by that.
Yeah, and Dr. Myra, this is such an important slide because whether managers realize it or not, they realize it or not, they are in a position of authority, and as such, people are watching them all the time, right?
Yeah.
So these particular behaviors are so important in order to bring that inspiration to their teams.
Absolutely. And again, like I said, even if you sync up with some people better than others, the influence part, it doesn't change. The modeling of behavior, the impact that still has a significant impact. So again, in the workforce, the manager just really plays a really special role in people's lives, in their careers as well. So the qualities of an inspirational leader. So they are calm in stressful situations. So again, this is a checkpoint, right? As a manager, if you panic and you compound the situation by lacking an ability to provide direction or to objectively look at the situation, or controlling your emotions, and that's the area you want to focus in on to be a better leader. They show their teams their humanity, right? So from a leadership perspective, you show grace, you empathize, you're kind, right? Those are things from a leadership perspective that you do that starts to create influence. From a management perspective, you make sure that all the T's are crossed and the I's are dotted, and that everything's in compliance with HR, right? But from the humanity perspective, you think in these areas that inspires people, right? Grace, kindness, empathy, those types of things in a difficult situation it stirs people up inside, right? If that gets handled correctly. They pay attention and they listen. I recently had a team member share, that they didn't feel like they were being heard. They felt like their feedback was falling on deaf ears, and how that made that person feel, right? And so really that's moving away from leadership in that they don't feel even acknowledged, right? And this is a high performing contributor, but that's the way it works. And so they're resilient. Inspirational leaders, they figure it out, right? And there's this hope about them of, it's okay, we're going to figure it out, or it's okay, let's think about that, let's see what we come up with. Those types of responses, that is a resilient, fearless leader. That is somebody who's never going to quit on you, right? Because they're going to find a way. And that creates momentum and hope, and it makes you feel like you can do it too because they said so, right? Like that's the kind of feeling that they create. They act with integrity. Even when it's hard, they will do the right thing. And as a leader, it's hard. Doing the right thing is always hard, by the way. It's usually much easier to avoid. It's usually much easier to deny. It's usually much easier to just walk past somebody, right? That you don't want to talk to. That's easy. It's hard to be of integrity. They develop talent. So inspirational leaders recognize the greatness in people and they speak to it, and they make the other person feel like their potential is something that needs to be realized, or the world is going to miss out on you. And that is so true. That is so true. So think about your interactions with people, and if you're making them feel this way. Okay. So why is this important? Why is this human factor, this component of synergy and chemistry, so important to workforce and to a manager in their management role? It's important for these reasons. So motivation. So inspired employees are more likely to be motivated. They see the value and purpose in their tasks. So closing a letter seems like such a insignificant task, right? You're just closing and sending a letter. But knowing that you're closing and sending a letter that's going to the President of the United States to advocate for a grant that you're going to need in order to create the dream that you want, that's different, right? So motivation, that's what it does. It gives meaning to these tasks that we're supposed to be doing that could be very simple, because there's a bigger objective. There's a bigger purpose behind how important you sealing that letter is, right? Engagement. Inspired employees become more engaged in their work. They actually care about it. They care about the outcomes. They care about what you think of it, right? An engaged employee. Employees connect with leaders emotionally, creating work that feels meaningful, that has purpose. Innovation. Inspired employees feel valued, supported, and think outside the box more often, right? So if you're a leader, if you're a manager, all of the great ideas should not be coming from you. If they are, that's a red flag, right? It doesn't mean you're perfect and fantastic. It means you're not opening up the door enough, right, for other people to contribute and help make the environment better. Trust. Inspired employees are more likely to remain committed to leaders who they believe have a clear vision and know what they're doing. And so I have examples of this in my own experiences where I felt leaders couldn't come up with the direction. And so I literally did feel like it was a waste of my time being there. And so, I can resonate and empathize with other employees, managers, directors, you name it, who feel the same way if they're working really hard, but have no intended direction. Performance. Inspired employees are more likely to go above and beyond in their roles. So managers, part of our job is to get outcomes, right? Part of our job is to get people to work. I'm sorry to say, we can't make them do it. If they're going to provide great outcomes, they have to want it, and they have to believe in what's being done in order to really maximize what you have at the table. And so that's why this is so important. A positive culture. Inspired employees work according to the leader's tone of the organization. When you have an inspirational leader who can tear down problems, who can tell you this is the path, who can says, you know what, you're amazing, you are going to move because you're driven by this inspiration to be part of that momentum, right? And so that translates over to the type of culture and environment that you create. And naturally, as human beings, we want to tag along. We want to be part of that. And so we tag along with those people. Change management. So change is difficult. We fight it, we react against it. And so you want inspired employees because it'll make this function of management so much better and so much easier to do. Inspired employees rally behind a leader during times of change, making it easier to work towards common goals, right? So being inspirational as a leader in a management role makes your job easier, not harder. And so understanding that strategically, if you're a very transactional person, and I'm a very transactional person, what motivates me to be a high capacity leader is understanding that this is going to get me to the outcomes that I want in an organization, right? Okay. Any thoughts before I move on to shared vision, Marisa?
Yeah, I love all of that, all of the items on that previous slide, because it speaks to accountability, right? If we're inspiring people, they come to the table accountable. And I hear that in so many companies, right? There's this lack of accountability. Well, you know what? Maybe we just need to do a better job of inspiring our people.
Maybe we should listen to them, right? And see what it is, because people will tell you what's not working for them.
Yeah, they
And
will.
right. And so we're lacking in leadership when we don't pause, take feedback in, and then figure out what's applicable and what isn't. And then go through that process, right? That's also very inspirational. People who feel heard and seen feel valued, even if you don't go with their idea. And so, Marisa speaks to a common misconception where you think, oh, well, if we take their feedback, we have to apply it. That's not true. You're there to
So
lead and to make the distinction.
yeah, you do need to talk about it though.
Yeah. Yeah. You're on mute.
What you use and what you don't use, right? And why, right? Because when people understand, when you communicate and people understand the reasons behind decisions and where a business is going, they're more likely to be inspired by you and your leadership.
Oh, agreed. Okay, so building shared vision. So being an inspirational leader means you bring people along. Okay, that's part of the big underlining topic here. And so when we don't have a vision to provide to people, it's the blind leading the blind. Okay, and that's what it feels like to a team. So leaders who inspire are adept at building a shared vision. What's our shared vision? And you could do this on a team for a project. You can do this at the department level, and then you could do it at the very top. So the idea is building skill around how do I bring people together and give them a direction. That's the skill that needs to be labored. And a manager that can do that is going to move through the ranks very quickly, right? Because it's a skill set. They communicate goals and aspirations in a way that resonates with their team members, creating a unified direction. So we all know where we're moving towards and why. Oftentimes, what I have experienced in the workforce is people don't know why they're moving in a certain direction. And then not everybody's clear on their role within that direction. And that's what creates the chaos. Marisa, from an HR perspective, this has come up even in projects we've partnered on in other companies. What would you say to that piece of, creating a shared vision?
The communication aspect of this is so critical. And managers, leaders, even if you shared your vision once, it's not enough. You need to bring it to the forefront over and over and over again and remind people, hey, this is where we're headed. This is why we're headed there. Come with me. right? That is just, you just have to be repetitive and consistent in your messages.
Oh, 100%. And it's spot on what she's saying. So she gave you these great prompts that you can actually write down and use the next time you want to set vision. Come with me, say those words to your team. You'll be surprised how they respond. You might get some facial expressions there if they're not used to hearing that from you. But this is the alignment that we're talking about in this slide. It helps ensure that everyone is working towards the same objectives. It also it unifies us versus feeling like I'm doing my job, I'm working in my corner, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Okay, that's not what creates a team, right? That's just one individual contributor. And so that's not an inspired moment. And so we want to streamline efforts to improve overall results. And so in order to do that, you need that vision. You need to be saying those types of things. Here's why we're doing it. Here's the road we're taking. Come with me, right? And you're part of it and you're leading, right? And that's the momentum you want to create. So here are the barriers as managers and leaders that we come across in the workforce, okay? So know that these things happen, and they usually happen because we don't have an emphasis or a focus or haven't thought out inspiration in the workplace. Blaming others for mistakes, okay? Perfectionism. Perfectionism sounds good, right? Because it's perfect, but the reality is we're not. Nobody's perfect. So having this unrealistic standard, you're going to do the opposite of inspire. You're going to stifle, right? Because nobody can meet that expectation. Micromanagement, sitting on top of people, checking every 5 minutes as to what they're doing, asking them to record every little step they take. Has got to be the biggest waste of time and energy I've ever both experienced and seen in the workforce. It just doesn't work, and it works against our humanity, what's normal to us, what's natural to us. Making important decisions due to emotional reasons. I can recall leaders in my experience, executive leaders who every time they were upset, turned the company upside down with a radical project or change. That works against inspiration because it just creates volatility and there's no real direction, right? It's more to placate how they feel, right? So as a
Creates
manager,
fatigue.
it
Yeah, it
creates
creates
fatigue.
fatigue. Mm-hmm.
So it's important as managers to not take on those types of habits all the way through the organization. Jumping to conclusions. People that don't stop and really investigate what's happening stifle people and do the opposite of inspire because the integrity is lost. So if you're wondering why that isn't inspirational, it's because it's low in integrity and that doesn't inspire people. Expecting employees to do the job the way you do it. Okay, we are not all the same. We are made quite differently. And so we're not respecting people's differences or how their brain works or how they see the potential problem in their lens. And so that again works against inspiration. Toxic, we got some clapping. All right, I like it. Thanks, guys. Share your emojis. We love it. Okay, so toxic delegation. So delegation is great, and it's actually a management skill set when it is done right. If it is done wrong, it becomes toxic. And so it's important to know the difference between effective delegation and toxic delegation. Okay, and maybe we will touch on it on a different training, but there is a significant difference. And it could be that you're stifling inspiration by not delegating effectively or appropriately. Okay, pushing employees too hard. Human beings are not cattle, right? And not even cattle should be pushed, in my opinion, but that's a conversation for another day. The reality is pushing hard doesn't equate to better quality of work, right? Because quality of work or higher productivity has to do with how we're feeling and how we understand the opportunity in front of us as human beings. And so again, it's something that can't be forced. So anything that feels forced in the workforce is not going to have an enlightened outcome. Okay, forgetting about work-life balance for the same reasons, right? We're human. We need a break. We need to acknowledge our boundaries. We need to acknowledge our needs in order for us to really bring the best to the table and to show other people how to do it. So it's a barrier because as leaders, we show people what's acceptable. We show them how to love themselves in the work environment. It's that sensitive. We show them how to create healthy neurological, physiological practices in the work environment as leaders and managers. And so when we don't have that in place or don't know what that looks like, we're really harming people. And that's the neuroscience component of what we do, speaking a little bit. But we create all of these neural pathways and these things. And we've said this before in other webinars, but they could be permanently harmful. So again, there's a deep meaning behind that. So where leaders commonly fail to inspire, this is where we kind of go wrong in the workplace. Challenging management styles, ongoing conflict with key stakeholders, making the same mistakes over and over again. So as leaders and managers, we refuse to change, we refuse to correct our behavior, being stubborn about, this is the way I do it, this is the way I've done it, nothing's ever going to change type of thing. That's where we go wrong. Transitioning from a technical role to a leadership role without training or development, right? So a technical role can be an individual contributor role, somebody who's worked at a certain thing for a very long time but doesn't necessarily know how to be a manager, right? Do you have comments on that, Marisa?
It's a very, very common mistake, and it happens in just about every company. And it's very harmful to a team because, what happens is you're putting people through the school of hard knocks, right? And you learn fast for sure, but you make a lot of mistakes along the way, which damages relationships. So really important to have that transition.
Yeah, and some of them you can't come back from, right? Some of them you lose people because of it. So these are where we fail to inspire people because we didn't provide direction, even though the opportunity may have been a positive one. Overly relying on everyone's approval, right? So we can't inspire if we're trying to make everybody happy. A leader steps out of that, right? A leader makes the tough choice, but knows how to own it and provide direction through it. Tolerating poor behavior, that is really kind of an inspiration killer. Why even try if poor behavior is tolerated? So make sure you're addressing things promptly. That's part of the integrity again. They don't connect the dots with their audience. They're not listening to feedback. They're not applying it, right? Back to that example that I gave. Top performers, top contributors, if they recognize the value they bring to the table, they will reconcile the fact that their feedback is not being taken in. And so that will not lead to a positive outcome. Okay. So very fragile instances in workplace culture. So this quote really struck me, right? Leaders don't force people to follow, they invite them on the journey. So make sure that you're inviting people on your journey. Make sure you know what your journey is and where you're headed, right? Because if you're not inviting people along and you're just in your office and you're working on your thing, then that's where the inspiration is lacking. Okay, so it's important to say, come with me, come on this journey. Let's accomplish something together. Okay, so these are our key takeaways right on time. So inspiration is different from motivation. So know those distinctions to start. Okay, leaders inspire employees through specific interactions. It's that invite, come with me, right? It's that interaction. Inspiration is an important function of leadership because it helps mobilize employees. Building a shared vision is necessary for inspiration. It cannot happen without it. Inspiration cannot be forced. It has to be nurtured. Okay, so it's a very different thing from management for sure. With that said, I'll pass it back to you, Marisa.
All right. As we conclude today's session, of course, I encourage you to identify one functional area where you excel, right? Work on that, leverage that, and then consider some of the other areas of leadership where you want to further develop your skill and then work on that. To help you revisit the content, the recording of this webinar and the deck will be emailed to all participants in follow-up. You can also find additional resources, including management planners and other tools to support your ongoing development at the website managementcues.org. We'll continue mastering the art of effective leadership on Tuesday, June 4th, Pacific time. In the meantime, you can connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube to stay updated on future events, revisit past sessions, submit your questions, and of course, share your feedback. Thank you for being part of the Art of Effective Leadership series. We'll look forward to seeing you next week. Bye.